there's really no better feeling than being on the same word of the same paragraph on the same page in the same book with a group of people who all get it.
Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm super happy as always to be here with you. It's my absolute pleasure to introduce Mr. Nigel Hall to you for this episode. Nigel is an incredible musician. You only have to look at some of his solo work or his work with the iconic funk band Zoidis to see this guy has chops. As you'll hear, he's had a fascinating musical upbringing and an even more fascinating career in music. There's lots that we cover off, and I think you'll enjoy it a great deal. And we even dive a little bit into some gear talk. So yeah, I'll let you jump in and listen to Nigel, and I'll talk to you at the end of the show. Nigel, how are you, sir? It's such an honour and a privilege to have you on the show. How are you doing this fine evening?
I'm doing very, very well. It's great to talk to you, and I'm honored to be a part of this podcast. It's one of my favorite podcasts to watch. I'm an avid watcher and fan, and I'm very grateful to be now a guest on the show. Thank you for having me.
No, that means a huge amount coming from your good self. So no, thank you. So I thought we'd jump in and just talk a little bit about 2025. And I was saying before we started recording, I'm super excited that I'm getting to see you live in a couple of weeks in Australia. But tell us about your year to date. I know you've been playing shows and doing all sorts of stuff.
This year has been very busy for me. I have been touring a lot with my band with the band Lettuce. We are promoting a new album called Cook that I believe is coming out in December. I have also been doing some work with Cleary. I play with also. I play organ and electric piano, clavinet in his band. I have also been trying to complete 2 new solo records that I have been working very, very diligently to complete. I have some very great songwriters and producers, and these are the first projects that I felt like I haven't had to do everything by myself. What else have I been doing? Yeah, I've been working really hard. I've been in the shed and, just trying to get better, trying to be a better person. I think has been my main goal, because I really feel like the person that you are as a human is what is reflected most through your music. And I want to be as accurate as possible of who I was or who I am at the time of this music that's being created. So I think that's the best way to find out about someone, because we as artists, we wear our emotions on our sleeve.
And Nigel, we're definitely going to talk about both Lettuce and your solo work, and I'd love to come back to that being the better person stuff, because I think that's, a great insight. So we definitely will come back to all that. I'll probably just jump back a decade or two to your childhood and your musical upbringing, Nigel. So I love on your website.
First of all, that's very kind of you.
Yeah, I know. I'm a charmer.
Yeah, you are.
I
You're laying it on thick too, ain't you?
I do.
I know it's right.
I owe you. I love on your website, you have this wonderful anecdote about you grew up with a father that had an amazing record collection, and while others were listening to Ace of Base, you were listening to Return to Forever. So just tell us a little bit about your musical upbringing and those early years.
Absolutely. Well, my father is probably one of my biggest musical influences. He is a guitar player, and when I was born, he had a vast collection of records. And not only him, but my mom. Between him and my mom together, I grew up in a record store. And then I would go and visit my aunt, Louise, who she also had a vast amount of records. So as I was growing up, everywhere I went, the one thing that I noticed that everyone that was cool had in common was this big, vast collection of vinyl and records. And I learned a lot from my father, because my father, a lot of people know me as a soul musician and a soul keyboard player and whatnot. But a lot of people, I don't think I think people are really starting to now realize that fusion was kind of my security blanket, if you will. And I grew up I was definitely the weird kid in school. I would go to school with my Walkman. This was back when we had Walkmans, because you said it was a decade or two. It was longer than that. But I would go to school with a Walkman, and I would be listening to people like Return to Forever and David Sancious and Santana and Steely Dan, Stanley Clarke and George Duke and the Crusaders. And I mean, I was the weird kid, you know, and I enjoyed that. And I knew then, I knew then that there was a pride in that. And I knew that there was something deeper musically than what was being given to the demographic that I was in at the time. And those things always stuck with me. The love of music that my mother and father had, it definitely rubbed off on me. And I'm glad that it did, because I came up in DC in a time where there was a lot of crime and a lot of drug use. Our mayor was smoking crack at the time. So if that gives you a general idea of where I was growing up. But, I say that, but I say that jokingly, but there was a lot of great things that I was exposed to, and that kept me out of trouble. And, I really still listen to a lot of that music today, because I'm brought back to those times where I would sit with my dad and listen to these records. My father took me to the first concert that I ever went to in my life was a Stanley Clarke and George Duke concert.
Wow.
At Carter Barron Amphitheater. And I wasn't even into George Duke then. I was a Stanley Clarke fan. And I didn't really get into George Duke until I was like 9. Then I was like, all right, this is where we're going here. But my entire family is musical to some degree. Not everyone are musicians. My dad was a musician. I'm a musician. My grandfather, he was the patriarch of the whole thing, but he wasn't really a musician, but he could have been. He may as well have been, because that is kind of where the idea of having so much vinyl started from. So yeah, I grew up in a very colorful environment, especially when it came to not just music, but the arts and any kind of art, visual art. A lot of the people in my family were really fly, but they were always dressed to the T. I like to think I took some of that from them as well.
Absolutely.
But a lot of what I play and a lot of how I play comes from being exposed not just to that music, but to that environment. It reflects that environment. And it's something that I feel I have a lane in. And, I feel like, George, I feel like that I'm one of the only ones that can do what I can do. I mean, we all are individuals, and it would be pointless for all of us to be able to do the same thing. So everything that I do is a reflection of how I came up and everything that I've gone through in my life and everything that I've seen and heard and felt. So I hope
exactly. Great perspective. And so I do need to ask, Nigel, through your teenage years, what got you to the level where you thought, hey, I want to do this for a living? Was it lessons at school? Was it inspirations in the DC? And I know you moved to New Orleans in 2013, but just what got you to the stage of, I think I want to do this?
I think I knew very, very early that I was going to be a musician. I knew around the time I was 4 or 5 that I was going to be a musician, mostly because my dad was. And every child, every son wants to do and be what their dad is and make their dad proud. And for a long time, I did it for that reason until I grew up and realized that it was definitely something that I wanted. And it was something that I wanted to explore. That territory was something that I wanted to be a part of. So I knew very early. I knew a lot of my family has said that they knew from the moment that I was born that I was going to be a musician. They've always said I was either going to be a bum or successful. And I've been both, seriously. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true.
Now, and tell us what you mean by that. I mean, obviously I understand what a bum is. Did you have a period where, there was a real issue with poverty, homelessness, stuff like that? Or do you mean more broadly than that?
Well, I feel like it. I can only speak from my own experience in my own life, and I think that when I was younger, I'd always been the kind of person or the kid who was not going to sit around and wait for people to do things for me. I had already in my mind a vision of how I wanted things to go for myself. And it didn't matter whether or not my choices resulted in a beating, I was going to try it. I had a very strong vision of how I wanted my life to go. And I knew that there were certain things that I had to do to achieve some of those things. And a lot of times I made decisions growing up that may not have been the best, but taught me the lesson of how to do it correctly. And after many, many times of trial and error, or trial under fire, if you will, I figured it out. And honestly, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. I love it. Great answer. And so what was your first band that really made a difference or had an impact on you, Nigel? What was your first band experience?
My first band experience, playing in a band or seeing or hearing a band?
Playing in a band yourself.
Oh, playing in a band. Oh, well, this is a great story. When I was 18 or 19, I think, wow, that was that long ago. I might have, I was about 18 or 19, and I was living in Bangor, Maine at the time, and I played in a band called The Funkazon. And it was the very first band that I ever played in. And I met these guys. I met the bass player of the band because I was playing drums in a band. The original drummer in the band either left or got kicked out or whatever. And they called me to play drums in the band. And I was playing with the bass player, and me and him, we were in a groove, man. It was cold. And for whatever reason, very quickly, that situation didn't work out. But me and the bass player really got in because we had that connection. He said, "Hey man, I actually have my own band and I need a keyboard player." And I was like, "Well, okay, I can play keys too." And I started playing in that band, and then I met the guitar player. I mean, it was kind of very serendipitous. It kind of all just happened the way that it was supposed to happen. And we started playing. I think that very first rehearsal, we knew that we would be in a band together. And we added another guitar player who turned out to be still to this day, my very best friend. All of those guys are still very much my best friends. We talk every day, but I knew that's when I kind of really felt the power of friendship and connection and how that reflects into the music,
Yeah.
It really felt good to me. There's no better feeling. And I've said this many times before, but there's really no better feeling than being on the same word of the same paragraph on the same page in the same book with a group of people who all get it, who all are learning, who all are reading and obtaining this knowledge and this feeling all at the same time. It's like watching a movie with a bunch of people that you've never seen, and you're just, the suspense comes out and somebody jumps out the closet, blows somebody's head off, and everybody, it's that feeling of excitement.
Absolutely.
That feeling of climax, pause, that is memorable and that you don't ever forget. So that's kind of when I knew I was going to be, well, I had already had in my mind I was going to do this, but it was just a matter of with who, for how long, and taking the steps to get to where I eventually wanted to be.
That's right. And you said that when you were asked to join that band, you said, "Yeah, I can play keys." And by God, can you play keys? And, that's why we're so thrilled to have you on the show. What was your first involvement with keyboards? And again, whether it was by ear or professional training or a combination, how did you get your chops up in those first years?
I hate to admit this, but I never took lessons, and I wish I had always taken. I wish I had found a place that I could take lessons to learn how to play. But more than a musician, I'm a fan.
Yeah.
And I'm an avid listener. And when I'm really into something, I check it out. Like I said, I grew up listening to Chick Corea and George Duke and Joe Sample and, Bob James, obviously, and, all of these people that really had an effect on how I moved as an individual, because I knew wasn't nobody else listening to that shit. I don't know, man. I just think that, I think that was a huge part in how it all started. What the first keyboard that I ever had, actually, I have it here. It's way back there. I could grab it, but it's way back there. But it's a Yamaha DX27, and my dad for me, and that's how I learned how to use the pitch wheel to bend the notes and stuff like that. But when I started playing in that band, I knew that it was very important for me to get a Fender Rhodes, and because I said that if I was going to do this, if I was going to, go and do these gigs out in the cold and lift gear, take it from the car and set it up every night, I was going to play something that I wanted to play. And I wasn't going to, settle for just whatever sound I could use. Like, I really needed to be able to express myself. And so, Lord, was that a bad decision? Just because those motherfuckers are heavy. You try, listen, like I said, I was in Maine, man. You try carrying a suitcase roads through the snow, but that was definitely what I wanted to do. And I decided that it was necessary to just do whatever I could to obtain the sounds that resonated with me, because I didn't have the technical knowledge on how to do it. So for me, I think it helped me to have the sounds that I wanted, because then it was like, okay, well, you at least sound like you want to sound. So maybe that will help you learn how to actually play the things that make you sound how you really, really want to sound, and make you play the things that you come up with in your head.
Which I think you've well and truly achieved. I mean, we'll be linking to lots of your work, but for those already aware of Nigel's work, there's no doubt you're an incredible player. And so I'm just interested what the springboard was from that period in that first band to, through to 2006 or so when you joined Lettuce. What was your sort of progression towards that period?
Oh, man, this is like an episode of This Is Your Life.
Yeah.
So from Funkers on, this is really difficult. Well, I ain't gonna say it's difficult for me to remember, but there's a lot that I did. Like I said, I was living in Maine at the time, and really the short answer is this. So I was living in Maine, and when I was playing with the band, the Funkers on, I moved shortly after that. Life happens to everyone, and I ended up moving to Portland, Maine, which is about 2 hours south of where I was in Bangor. And that's where I met Ryan Zoidis, who is the saxophone player for Lettuce, one of my closest friends. And I, at the time, was playing in the band with my best friend, John Nato, who plays guitar for Dirty Honey, the rock band Dirty Honey. We were all playing in a soul band together, the Nigel Hall band. So when I left Funkers on, I said, okay, I'm ready to start my own band. Lord, was I not ready to start my own band. There's a lot that comes with that. And those are still frustrations I'm having to this day. But I started in that band, and then Ryan Zoidis, I met him in Portland because he's from Portland. And he met me, and he was like, hey man, we should play together. And I'm like, absolutely we should. And he started playing in my band, and from there, I played with Robert Randolph and the Family Band. I used to play with them. I played in a band called Rustic Overtones that's from Portland, Maine. And then from there, I started playing with Soulive. And I was just singing. with Soulive because, I mean, obviously Neil Evans is the keyboard player of that gig. There's no way else. Look, let me tell you something. That is not a gig I want. That is a lot of responsibility, and it takes a lot of what I don't have to achieve that. As I'm getting older, I'm learning the power of yielding.
Yeah.
And it's okay to do that. And then after Soulive, there was kind of that cross conglomeration of Soulive and Lettuce because they all were together at one point or another. And Neil was playing with Lettuce also. And when Neil decided that it was time for him to move on, I've been around for quite some time, actually. And I already knew the songs. So it only made sense for me to step into the keyboard chair. And it's a decision that I'm very, very glad that I made. And
Yeah.
I've been able to make some impact with the music and the people, and it feels really good.
Absolutely. And just before we jump into Lettuce, you've just prompted me on a question. So you mentioned about the challenges of having your own band and being able to yield and stuff like that. It's probably just worth, because all of our listeners are keyboard players and sometimes band leaders. What have you found the challenges of running your own band is versus being part of another band?
Well, I think the challenges for me are, well, not even just for me, but everybody else. The real challenge is money.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of a creative standpoint, because of the lack of money sometimes that people are willing to give for a good product, because you got to have you got to have more than the product these days. The music business is not what I thought it was going to be when I was a child. And it's also something that changes every 5 minutes. And you really got to be on point to paying attention to how it changes every 5 minutes. And that's very difficult to do for people who are creative, because our minds are always working on something, and it takes a special kind of human being to be able to really do both. I have a tremendous respect for John Cleary because he is able to do that. And I'm not saying that he don't have his own frustrations either, but I am saying that he is very, very good at being a band leader, having a great attitude, and being able to make and bring forth to people the music the way that he wants to do it. And that's very difficult to do. For instance, with my music, when I'm recording, I go ham. And that kind of is my problem sometimes. But at the same time, when you make a record, I really feel like those will stand the test of time. Those records will be here longer than we are. So I want to make sure that when you hear my music, that you hear, and wherever I was at that time is properly conveyed. So I think that it's really difficult for people to have their own bands now and do their own things unless they have some sort of establishment in the music business and the music world where they can do that. And when you can get to that point, that is when you should have full gratitude.
Yeah.
I remember a time when I was with Lettuce and we were in the van and, taking that van trip, and the van was funky, and every now and then. And look, here's the other thing too, is that, you can have that. It's good to humble yourself and do things with people where you can go back to doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, now if you get old and you can't move, I don't suggest taking the 15-hour drive in a van with a bunch of stinky other people. I don't suggest that, unless you can do it.
Yeah.
Physically and mentally, because that's the other part too, is that you mentally got to be together. So, and that's another thing too that I feel is a challenge, because, there's a lot, being out on the road is fun for a lot of people. And sometimes people take that fun a little too far.
Yeah.
And then you got to deal with that. I was one of those people too at one point, and I'm glad that I'm now at a point in my life where I'm able to go and have the right kind of fun by playing music and doing what I know I'm supposed to be here to do. But there's a lot to come. There's a lot of things. And we could take this whole episode talking about what it is that's difficult for artists and why it's difficult for artists to have their own shit. But I'm not scared. I'm not scared of it at all. I just feel like for me right now, it's important for me to finish these records.
Yeah.
It's important for me to have some new material to go out and play, because that's the other thing too, is you have to have material that you're excited about playing. And while I have 2 albums out, I'm very excited to play the music for anyone who wants to hear it. But there's so much more that I want to do.
Yeah.
And I want to get to the point where I can mentally put myself in a place where I can convey that music to people and be able to tell the right story.
Exactly. No, really well put. And so let's talk Lettuce for a little while. I mean, you've sort of covered off how you joined the band. It doesn't feel like it required an audition as such. You were already well known and you sort of just slotted in after Neil left. Is that a fair representation?
Well, as funny as it was, I was in Australia when I got the gig. When I got the gig, I got a call, and I think I got a call from Neil, and Neil was just saying, "Hey man, I think it's time for me to step down. Would you be into taking the reins?" And Neil and I were doing keys together at one point, which was amazing for me, because he played organ, clavinet, and bass keys, and I would play Fender Rhodes and ARP string ensemble and motif. Like, I would just be playing aux keys, and then I would come up from behind the keyboards and sing and do that. That was back when I was into doing that. You probably won't see me do too much of that anymore. I mean, unless I'm like with my band, maybe I'll do it. But I'm a keyboard player, so I want to be doing that. But yeah, that was, and I think back on that. That was about 15 years ago. That was longer than that, actually. Yeah, that might have been 15 years ago when that happened. That was a while ago, man.
Yeah.
Time flies, man.
It sure does. And I mean, and here you are now, you've got your upcoming album coming out with Let Us Cook, which I've had the pleasure of listening to the 3 songs that you've already released. So Breathe, Gold Tooth and Rising to the Top. Just amazing. For those that aren't aware of Lettuce, and there wouldn't be many, but those that aren't, you've got to check this stuff out because it's amazing. But just tell us about the latest album, your approach to it. It still sounds incredibly fresh and vibrant. Just, what was the story behind, getting it out?
Well, we decided that it was time for us to go back into the studio. We had just released, well, not just, but we had released Elevate, which got nominated for a Grammy. And we released Resonate shortly thereafter. And Resonate was, when we went in to record Elevate, we recorded about 25, 26 songs. And so nowadays you can't put that many songs on a record unless you're Stevie Wonder. So we decided to put out Resonate as the other half of the tunes that we initially recorded for Elevate. And we decided that it was time to go in and record another. And then we did Unify. And then after Unify came out, I think we had a lot of things that we were going on. After Unify came out, that's when the pandemic happened. And when the pandemic happened, we couldn't go out on the road. We couldn't do what we were doing. And a lot of things happened in my life at that time. And I went into the studio to record Spiritual, my record Spiritual.
Yeah.
And then, but all during that time, we had been, all of us in the band Lettuce, we had just been writing music. We couldn't do nothing, couldn't go nowhere. So we were just sitting in our houses and we were just writing music. And fortunately, all of us have a way to do that. The pandemic changed that for everybody. Everybody got studios now. But in that time, we had all just come up with music. And Adam Deitch is a very prolific writer in terms of the music that Lettuce plays. And he, like myself, has a very stern idea of how to do this music. The group of people that he has to do it, I mean, he's spoiled, because all he's got to do is call us and we can do it. But we all contributed our own little flavor to all of it, which is what makes that music so special. And when we got back to a point where we could tour again, and we spent a lot of time on the road, we decided it was time to make another record. And so we went into the studio and we said, press record. And I think we spent about a week and a half in there, and we just tried to just come up with as many ideas to, cause me personally, I love being in the studio. There's nothing like being in the studio. I'm more comfortable in the studio than I am my own house sometimes. And I'm really comfortable in there, So it was just a matter of us all being in a place where we could all congregate like we used to and get together and make some special music. When we get together and make music, it's not rocket science. I think that all of us have a knowledge of what it takes to make a meaningful record, meaning that is pure. We all grew up listening to records, and we know what records mean to us. And as I stated before, records are going to last longer than the people who make them. And we are very keen about those decisions that we make on records. We just get in there, and as long as we got the right gear to do it, which generally we do, we got the right tools. We got, if you ever watch Ghostbusters, Winston said, we got the tools and we got the talent.
No, you certainly do. And you just raise a good point, Nigel, about making decisions. So whether it's this album or Unify or the albums before, I mean, I can't imagine it's 100% agreement all the time. Every band has their decision points and their debates over the approach. How have you managed to make it work so well as far as the final product working through where there is disagreement?
Well, there's not really much contention in terms of what we're when we're creating, because we all listen and we all are listeners and we all know, I try to tell people a lot of the time that it's not about playing the best thing. It's about playing the right thing. It's not about playing the cool thing. It's about playing the right thing. You can play all the cool shit in the show. That's what people come for. People come for that. But you want to play something that somebody's going to remember. You want to help make a memory. You want somebody to be driving down the 101 or driving their mother to the store or at a cookout or going on your first date or, things like that, and have your music somehow playing in the background. And when they hear it 10 years later, they're like, oh shit, I remember when such and such happened. And that doesn't, unless you're me listening to Return to Forever, you got to be able to hone that sort of thing in. And because we all are people who love records first, even before our own instruments, we love listening to records. And we know what those records did to us as kids and as people growing up in music. And so all as the band, and I think it's safe to say individually as well, that all we try to do is just recreate that. Yeah. Because all of the people who we are influenced by, they're all leaving us. They're all leaving this realm. But their music is now, and their music is going to be here forever. And, it's all about taking the time that we have on this earth to make the statement that we want to make. So you better do it right.
That's right.
The first time.
Yeah.
Because you may not get a second time. Exactly. You're not going to get a second time.
No, I love it. No, amazing answer. Thanks, Nigel. And I'm just in the recording of that album, but also with your live shows with Lettuce at the moment. What is your go-to rig? I mean, I've watched some videos and I can see that, you tend to pack a Nautilus, you have a Rhodes, you have a Clavinet. Just tell us about your general rig for a show.
Well, the rig that I have with Lettuce right now is, as I said before, like, I won't be seen without a Rhodes.
Yeah.
I just won't.
And do they tend to be the original ones, or you're okay with one of the newer models?
Well, for my Rode rig with Lettuce, I have a Mark 7. I have about 5. I have 5 Rhodes pianos. I have one out there with them. That's a Mark 7. I got one upstairs in the living room. That was my first suitcase Rhodes I ever had. And that thing has been through hell and back. Yeah. But I keep it up there as a reminder to where I've been. in my life. There was a time where I was going through some very hard times in my life, and I had to be outside, and I didn't have nothing else, but I had that damn Rhodes and a dolly, and I would wheel it around town, and I would have to sleep outside on it and everything. And I still had that Rhodes upstairs. So that's up there. This Rhodes right here, I'm moving over so you can see it a little bit. My studio's.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this Rhodes was built by my friend Luke Jones in Los Angeles, and he owns a company called Custom Vintage Keys.
Oh, yeah.
And he built this. This is the best Rhodes I've ever had. But that's not the question you're asking me.
No,
The
I love it,
question
though.
is because so I have a Rhodes. I have an ARP Odyssey.
Oh, yeah.
I use an ARP Odyssey religiously. I have a Korg mini log next to that on top of my Rhodes. To my right, I have a Nautilus on the bottom, Nautilus 73 key. On top of that, I have a JP88, Roland JP88. And on top of that, I have an ARP string ensemble. And to my left, I have a Hammond XK2 going through a Leslie. And I have a Clavinet D6. I get E7 on the road rig, but generally I like the D6.
Yeah.
And listen, man, that could change.
Yeah, that's a choice.
That changes. Listen, if I'm ever out on the road and I find something dope, I'll buy it, and then it'll be part of the rig. My tour manager typically does not like that, but but you know, we manage.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Lettuce, that's it's a pretty big rig, but it also adds to the vibe that I bring. You know, there's a lot of different ways to go when you have that many keyboards that range from that variety of, you know, everything. So you got to be careful with, you know, a lot of people can see all of those keyboards and be like, oh, it's going to be a madman. I'm not really doing madman shit. I'm doing, you know, there are times where I'm playing like 3 or 4 of them at the same time. But thank God for sustain pedals.
Yeah.
And release. And you know what I'm saying? Like things like that, you know, they make me look good. And I'm glad for it.
Oh, you've definitely got the chops to match. And I do one other question about that rig. There's a great video I saw of you guys playing Let Sanity, and Corey Wong joined you on stage. I know you had some pedals on top of your clavinet. What are your sort of go-to pedals to, I assume they're for the clavinet, but I wasn't 100% sure.
What did I have? I had a, all of this is getting changed up because I'm doing something different now, but then I had like a slap back delay.
Oh yeah.
I always use a Vox wah. I don't use a crybaby for the clavinet. I just like the filter. The filter in the Vox is just magical for whatever reason. I don't know why. Maybe it's Vox. I don't know, but shout out to Vox because they figured that shit out. I use a crybaby on my ARP Odyssey. I'll use it there. But I had a slapback. I was just using the slapback and the wah pedal for that intro. If that's what I think you're talking about.
Yeah.
I was just using that, but I also have like a scream. This is funny. It's like a DOD. No, it's not a DOD. It's a Digitech.
Oh yeah.
Screaming blues pedal.
Okay.
And it was my dad's pedal.
Wow.
It belonged to my father. And whenever I want that thing to really scream and when I'm ready to go off, that's when I'll use that. But I also have now a one of those a Fender analog delay.
Oh yeah.
Where I can because we like to get weird sometimes, so that's good for that. But there's not much that I put on a clavinet. It's just, it's just some delay, some nice slapback. I love to have a slapback. I love to have something where I can have a long delay. Also, a nice distortion, something to give me a little bit more. Yeah, there's not really much I did. And
No, that's
'cause I
great.
really like to use, I honestly I like to use just a straight clap sometimes.
Yeah.
When there's a groove that's happening and it's like, especially in Let Sanity too. And I think I might have done it on that particular performance, but when you just use a straight clap, all you need really is that. But yeah, my wife was there that night.
Yeah. Yeah. As you should. As you should. No, thanks. Thanks, Nigel. That's a brilliant overview. Really appreciate it. And I do want to talk about your amazing solo output as well. So just aside from many other things you do, you've had 3 amazing albums between 2015 and last year. The original Ladies and Gentlemen, Nigel Hall, which just as an aside has the best damn cover of I Can't Stand the Rain that I've ever heard. It's just amazing. And then Spiritual that you alluded to before, and then The Burning Bush, the tribute to Earth, Wind and Fire. Just tell us about, again, the itches that scratch for you as far as a creator in your own right. Because, sorry, just an extra bit on that. For the sake of our listeners and viewers, this is not Lettuce Part 2. This is an absolutely different approach and lots of soul and R&B influences. But just, tell us about your approach to those albums.
Well, Ladies and Gentlemen was produced by my good friend Eric Krasno, who we decided back when I lived in New York City. When I moved from Portland to New York, when I decided that I was going to jump into the pool of stress and worry. When I decided that I was going to do that, I had been playing with Soulive. I had been playing with Lettuce. I had just really started playing with Lettuce. And we had all lived in New York City at the time. And during that time, the making of that record was kind of like our fun time. We would all go into the studio and I would have an idea and it was all fresh and new and it was like, all right, well, let's try it. And we went in there and we would just go in there, just have fun and stay in there till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. That was back when I was young, when I could actually do that. But that's where that came from. When we recorded I Can't Stand the Rain, we had all went into the studio one day and we were kind of working on these songs for commercial placement and stuff like that. And that was one of the songs on the list. So I kind of came up with some of the ideas that created that version. And as we were recording it, we were kind of all just looking around like, yo, this is way too killing. There's no way we're going to use this. If we use it for a commercial, we putting it out on an album first. Cause this is what this is. And I learned really how to make a record with that project. I learned that that's how you are going to be remembered, by making a record. As I said earlier, records are going to last longer than the people who make them will. Me and Kraz, this funny little story. Me and Kraz we would get into fights a lot during that record because I wanted to do something that I wanted to do because it was my record, right? But Kraz was trying to teach me that there's a certain aesthetic for some of those things. Now, can you imagine like a mini Moog solo on anywhere of that record?
No.
Right? But I wanted to put one every damn where on that record. And that record is not the kind of record a mini Moog solo would be out of place on a record like that. It's like listening to what's the name of that damn song? Don't Mess with Bill by Martha and the Vandellas, right? Motown, 1965. The mini Moog solo.
Yeah.
That would have never sold.
And Nigel is
who knows? But musically, sonically, that doesn't work. I always call that record the greatest record that you've never heard. Because I really feel like somebody 20, 30 years from now, maybe even after I'm gone, is going to find that record and be like, oh shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is this? And I really hope so. I hope that it's made an impact on people from the time it's been out up until now, and I hope it continues. When I did spiritual over the pandemic. And Spiritual was a really deep album for me because that was, I was going through a lot in my life in that record. And I did that record with the members of Butcher Brown. And I also had Patrice Rushen on that record. Shout out to Patrice Rushen. I had Zoidis on that record. I had Jeff Coffin on that record. I had Marcus King on that record. And I was going through a lot. I was dealing with the loss of my friend Kofi Burbridge. That really had a deep effect on me. Uh, I've really missed that dude so much, and he's part of the reason why I play the way that I do. Because when you listen to Kofi, Kofi is that dude. If you a keyboard player and you listening to him, we all listen to keyboard players and think of what we would do in that part of the song, different than what the keyboard player that is playing. That's fine. That's fine. That's natural. That's what creatives are supposed to do. But when you listening to Kofi, Kofi just always played the right thing. And that's what I'm saying. That's what made, that's why he made such an impact on me. On top of all of that, that was my homie. So I knew him on a more personal level. And he was one of the people that I could really be myself around. And I miss him. I miss him dearly. But I was going through I was going through his, the loss of him. Um, I was really having a serious problem with drugs and alcohol. So, um, after I had got done recording that record, I went into rehab. That record came out when I was in, well, actually, it was done before I went in, but that record came out when I was in rehab. And that really put a lot of things into perspective for me. And I listened back to that record and I really hear someone who is crying for help. You know, it's a great record. It's not a gloom and doom record by any means at all, but there are some moments in it that I listen back to that are kind of difficult to listen to, and not because it's bad, but because I knew where I was. But that also helps me to prove my point and helps me to realize that even though I was going through those things, I did it right. Because because you know, if you didn't know now before this interview, now you know that there's an energy that's behind that record. And look, we had a lot of fun making that record. There was a lot. There was we were having a blast being in there and making the music. But I was doing that because I needed to get away from some of the things that I was going through. And for thank God for all of the cats in Butcher Brown, because they helped me. They helped me get through that, and I'm forever grateful for them for that. And we were all in LA at the time, and Jameson was getting ready to play a gig with Patrice, and Patrice, I said I wanted to go by the sound check and just see the sound check. I didn't want to, I did want to meet her, obviously, but like, I just wanted to be a fly on the wall. And Jameson brought her up, and I mean, she was just so sweet, and she was the coolest person in the world. She reminded me a lot of my Aunt Louise. But I took this with me. This is the back of Before the Dawn, and I brought this with me when I went. And I went to a record store and bought it on the way, and she signed it for me. And so
That's amazing.
it's in my studio now. But it's amazing to work with her. I actually have a podcast of my own, and we just had her
There you go.
on my podcast not too long ago. She's the greatest in the world. And so yeah, so we finished Spiritual, and that's kind of what led to the Burning Bush thing.
Yeah.
Because on Spiritual there's a song called Caribou, which is by Earth, Wind and Fire. And me and DJ Harrison, who was one of my biggest inspirations, and I'm very fortunate to call him a friend as well. That's my brother. We had kind of already been working on this record just for fun time. Again, the pandemic allowed time to do things like that. And I would sneak down to Richmond and I would go to his studio, or at the time I was just starting to like build my studio together. So like I had a Rhodes and a interface and my laptop. Now I'm not using my laptop anymore. I got a big situation now, but we started sending tracks back and forth to each other. Before you know it, we had a whole record of all of these Earth, Wind and Fire songs because DJ and our secret, well, not secret, it's not a secret now, but our love is we love Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah.
Earth, Wind and Fire is part of the reason that I do what I do. So yeah, it was awesome to work with her. She's an amazing person, and we get to talk. We talk every now and then, but whenever we do, it's always good. And she always checks up on me, and she always makes sure that I'm cool. And she's always there to answer any questions that I may have, and just give me some sort of inspiration. Because sometimes I'll be like, man, look, I need some help.
Yeah.
So and she's always there to do it. She's always there to give it to me. So
No, she's amazing.
Shout to Auntie. That's what I call her. I call her Auntie. So
Love it. Love it. Here's a bit of a left of center question, Nigel. So what's the number one skill you think keyboard players out there need to master to be able to work well in ensembles or funk ensembles like you do with Lettuce in your own work and soul and stuff like that? What's the number one skill they need to do well?
listening.
Yeah.
Listening. The biggest objective for a keyboard player is to be listening. As I said before, I'm surrounded by like 8 or 9 keyboards.
Yeah.
And if I really wanted to go fucking ham, I can. Okay? And it's nice to be able to do that. But when you're playing with other people who may only have one thing or one sound or a few sounds, or not even that. I could have one keyboard. It doesn't matter. We have the responsibility to play lead, harmony, and melody, sometimes all at the same time. So it's important to listen to what everyone else is doing. We need to listen to what the drummer is doing. What is the drummer doing that I can do percussively? What is the guitar player doing that I can add to the chord structure of what he's playing? Where is the bass player playing so that I'm not in his way? Because a lot of keyboard players do that. A lot of keyboard players play down in the register where the bass player is when they ain't got no business being there. Just because you can use all 10 fingers don't mean you have to all the time.
That's right.
What are the horn players doing? What's the percussion player doing? What is the orchestra doing? And where do you fit in? And look, let me tell you something. When I'm playing with Lettuce, sometimes I ain't playing keyboards. I'm shaking a tambourine. Because I don't need to. I can. I'm sure people would like me to, but what's gonna make you happier? Not even that. And I don't mean no disrespect to the listener. What's gonna make me happier? Don't you want me to be happy? You want everybody on the bandstand to be happy so they can convey the happiness so that you can tap into that happiness. And a lot of times that means laying out. That means playing as simple as you can. If Shmeens is playing guitar in a pattern with a wah-wah, why am I going to get on the clavinet and use a wah?
Yeah.
Why am I going to do that? So I think it's very important. And it's not just for keyboard players. It's especially for keyboard players.
Yes.
But it's not just for keyboard players. You need to be listening. All the musicians in the band need to listen to one another, because just because you have the ability to do something doesn't mean you have to do it all the time.
Exactly.
And there's so much beauty in simplicity. A lot of people will say, "Oh, you just say that because you can't do it." That's not true. That's not true. A lot of people, and I've gotten into arguments. Listen, there's a lot of things that certain people can do that I can't do. And to be quite honest, I'm glad. I'm glad, because the reason that I do the way that I do what I can do. This is one thing that George Duke said to me personally.
Yeah.
George Duke is the reason that I am a keyboard player.
Yeah.
George Duke and my father are the two people that are probably solely responsible for me being a musician. And one of the things that he told me before he passed away was he knew that I was probably his biggest fan.
Yeah.
And he was aware that I knew every note that he has ever played before. And he said to me that regardless, and I think I'm saying this verbatim too, because I've listened to it many times. Regardless of what I do and what I play, somewhere in that, you should be able to find your own voice, because you will never be able to do what I can do. He's damn right about that. But he will never be able to do what I can do. And as I said before at the beginning of the interview, is that we are all individuals. What fun would life be if we all could do and be the same thing?
Exactly.
So it's very, very important for us as keyboard players to help the music breathe. And the way that we do that is not by smothering it. It's by listening to what everybody else is going on. And even if that means that what you can add or what you should add means to use 3 of your fingers instead of 10,
Yes.
just use those 3 fingers. Just use them. Because at the end of the day, when you listen to the playback and you see the look on everybody else's faces on stage, and you see the feeling out in the crowd about how everybody feels, you'll be happier about that.
Well put. And yeah, it's absolutely about serving the song. Yeah, extremely well put. So, Nigel, a couple of last questions. And the first one is the dreaded Desert Island Discs question. So, calling out 5 albums that have had a big impact on your life.
Okay. I'm trying to see if I got them in here. I probably don't. In no particular order. You want me to go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1?
Yeah, go whatever suits. Yep.
All right. Well, I'm not gonna do that because that's too difficult to rate, to put them in the numerical status. But I will say, damn, I thought this was gonna be easy. All right. School Day. No, not School Days. Journey to Love by Stanley Clarke.
Nice.
Extension of a Man by Donny Hathaway.
Great.
The soundtrack, the play soundtrack to The Wiz.
Love it.
Feel by George Duke. This is the last one, huh?
Yep.
Man Child by Herbie Hancock.
Love it.
Yeah.
Great picks. Yeah. Thanks, Nigel. Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah. That was painless. That was not painless as I thought it was going to be. So
no, you did well. Now, our last question, Nigel, is what we call our Quickfire 10. So it's actually a short and sharp answers to 10 sort of mini questions. The first one being, due to some serious crime you've committed, you're sentenced to 6 months in a tribute band. What tribute band are you choosing?
Damn. Steely Dan.
Yeah, good call.
I would have fun doing that. Yeah. I would still have fun doing that. Like, if I had to pick, if I had to pick, it'd be one thing one thing if I was sentenced. Like, I wouldn't want to do 6 months in the Marshall Tucker, no shade to Marshall Tucker.
No.
But that's just that ain't it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Love it. Before you play a gig, Nigel, what's an important ritual you need to have? What do you need to do to feel settled before you go on stage?
Me personally, I like to have some alone time,
Yeah,
alone and reflection time. That's very, very important for mental health. Just being out on the road, period. But
yeah,
definitely alone time. And sometimes that means the whole day
yeah,
before before the gig. Sometimes. But sometimes, I like to hang out. But definitely I like to spend some time by myself and just reflect, you know, talk to my
love it.
sons, talk to my wife, you know, try to stay out of music because I'm
Yeah,
gonna be in it for a minute. So,
no, I love it. Great. If you hadn't been a musician, Nigel, what do you think your career choice would have been?
I would have been a pro bowler.
Wow,
Yeah,
cool. Yep, love
definitely.
it.
Definitely. I
Do
really
you, do
enjoy
you still bowl? You still bowl? Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I bowl every day. I bowl today.
There you go. Love it. I love bowling.
Yeah.
Favorite tour you've ever done, if that's possible?
My favorite tour? Hmm. Well, I've toured with a lot of people. So, um, I think that if it was one specific tour, I think my first and only tour with John Schofield
Yeah,
was
wow.
was pretty epic.
Yeah,
Because John is a hero and a mentor of mine, and he's my dad's favorite guitarist.
yeah,
So, and then Billy Cobb and George Duke band had Schofield in it, and we were kind of playing some of those songs too. So, uh, Sco was really somebody who really advocated for me to just let loose and just really be myself musically. So I really had a good time doing that,
yeah,
and
love it.
it was a Europe tour. It was the first time. I think it was the first time I was ever in Europe too. So I think that was pretty special.
Yeah, that's a standout. Nearly impossible question, Nigel, but a favorite gig you've ever done?
That's not an impossible question. The last my favorite gig was the last time I played at the Fillmore with Lettuce.
Love it. Yeah,
That
well,
was a great gig. That was a really really special gig, and I don't know why. I don't know why. It was just one of those gigs. And every now and then we have a gig that's just like it was one of those gigs like oh shit, but that particular night it's something in that room. It's something in that room, it's San Francisco. We all love we all love Tower Power. We all love
yeah,
uh, you know, as I stated before, like George Duke's my hero. George
that's right.
at the Fillmore with Cannonball Adderley. That's where live at the Fillmore, Aretha, Jimmy stood on that stage. Like, like there was some shit that went down
Yeah,
there. And to be a part of it and have the kind of gig that we have and the crowd interaction that we had, it was really special that night.
yeah, no, absolutely. Now, you've actually answered the next one, Nigel, which was the first keyboard you ever owned, and do you still have it? And you've already alluded, it was the
Yeah,
DX
you know what?
G7.
I'm gonna grab it so you can see.
Okay.
I, I really don't feel like doing this, but here we go. Here it is, right here.
Wow.
This is the very same one too. This is not a. I didn't go out and buy another one. This sat in my father kept this thing, and it sat in the basement forever. And
So
I
cool.
grabbed it on a tour when I was in Kansas City, and I grabbed it from him. He said, I still got it. I could not believe that he still had this keyboard.
It's amazing.
And look, I don't know if you can see it, but I painted the pitch wheel gold.
Oh, he's too.
I just swore I was George Duke when I was
Yeah, love it.
so yeah, this is the very first keyboard that I ever had in my life, and I'll never get rid of it.
No.
This is, make me want to plug this thing in now that
Yeah,
it's out from
that's right.
behind the CP70.
No, that's great.
Yeah, I definitely still have it. And
Yeah,
it's a reminder. It's a reminder to me to, you know, everything that I've gone through in my whole life. It all started here. And I remember when I was a child that, I would sit and listen to my dad's records and I would just imagine in my mind of how I wanted my life to be as an adult. And of all of the things that I've been through in my life, I sit in a room right now with every instrument I've ever wanted in my entire life, including that one. And this room and the roads upstairs, and not even just musically, but where I've gotten to in my life after everything that I've gone through, with my family and all the hard times and all the good times and, going to rehab and, I'm sober 4.5 years now.
amazing.
And life has never been better, but it constantly shows me the gratitude that I have for being in the place that I am now, and to have where it all started still with me at 44 years old. I got that keyboard when I was 8 years old.
Yeah, wow.
So that's the thing I've had in my whole life the longest.
That's
So
right.
it's definitely a token of gratitude every time I look at it. And every time I look at this room.
And after that beautiful piece of positivity, a question that's a bit, it's not negative, but name a song that you used to love, but you've now maybe played it to death and would happily never play it again. Quite often our guests don't have one, so you may not even have such a song.
I can't really think of one.
No, there you go. That's not unusual.
Oh, Brick House. I'll never play that shit again. Brick House. I'll never play. Actually, you know what? That's a lie. Because with the right people, if I ever go see the Commodores and they ask me to come up and play Brick House,
You'll do it.
Hell yeah, you crazy?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, the answer is no. There's no song. Now, there's another side to that. It depends on who it's with.
Yeah, true. No, it's valid. Very valid.
Depends on who it's with. I'm picky about that. And if you can listen, if you can play it, if you can really play it, and I know you can play it, it don't matter what song it is. We'll play it.
True.
Because it'll be done correctly.
That's right.
But there are some songs that I see people doing from time to time that are very cringeworthy.
Yeah.
They say, as the kids say, that's what my kids say. It's cringe.
Yeah, cringe.
So
no, great perspective. Name one thing you'd like to see invented that'd make your life as a keyboard player easier.
I would probably be able to answer that question more accurately if I were setting up my gear.
Yeah.
But I can honestly say that I'm pretty comfortable.
Pretty well set up. Yeah, no, that's fine.
I'm comfortable with my life as a keyboard player.
Yeah,
I'm grateful
great.
to have people set all these damn keyboards up for me.
Yes,
I can tell you that. But on the other end, I'm very involved. Like when we do gigs and we go out on the road, I'm very involved in the setup.
Yeah,
of the keyboards. The breakdown, not so much, but the setup. I like to get in there and put things where I want it, and it's
good.
like, okay, does this work? And set my shit up, and I enjoy that. I think
that's good.
I think I'm just grateful, man. Gratitude is the name of the game these days for me.
It is.
I'm just really, really grateful to be able to do what I want, sound how I want to sound, and make the impact that I make on people, if any. And if anything, I'm continuing to show myself that when you do things right, then you get the right reward. So
that's right.
And that means musically and outside of music too, as well.
Couldn't agree more. And the very last one, Nigel, is a favourite non-musical activity or hobby. So what keeps you sane outside of music?
There's a few things. Like I said, bowling is definitely
Oh,
one.
yeah.
Definitely bowling. Uh, I love to. I love to spend time with my family.
Yeah.
Family is very important to me. It always has been, but more so now because we all getting older,
Yeah.
and time is not promised to
No.
anybody. And I'm just trying to. I spent a lot of time on the road away from my family in my younger years, and uh, I'm really just trying to make up. Not necessarily make up, but I want to spend some time with my family. I think that's important, and seeing the world and making memories with people that I love. I think those are and even outside of like photography, like just capturing memories. Just music definitely helps to do that, but there are other things that help you do that as well.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that too much of anything is not good for you. So
Yeah.
you got to really find, it helps me a lot to step away from music. Like I work very hard, and even on my own stuff, like I'll come in here and work on some stuff. But then, I'll come in here, I'll work for 20 minutes. I ain't in no rush. And I'll go out and I'll take the dog to the park. Got a
That's right.
park that's literally a block away from me that I'm in every morning. And, and I go to the park and, you got to step away from it. So,
Yeah.
I really enjoy it. I love washing my car.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that.
I love keeping the car clean. Love keeping the bills paid. Love eating good. Love sleeping in my bed.
No, I think
That's
that's a great
those are
perspective on life. And Nigel, I have to say, I mean, music has obviously played a big role in making you the resilient human being you are, but you've also brought a huge amount to music, and I can't thank you enough for taking the time with us today. And I'm super excited in a couple of weeks to actually see you putting it on the line all the way down here. I can't thank you enough for spending the time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on this podcast. As I said earlier, I am a huge fan. You've had some of my heroes on this podcast, and to be one of the people on that list, that's a really huge accomplishment for me. And I just hope that everyone enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed it, and I hope they learned something from it. And we got a record coming out. Let Us Cook is coming out in December, and we coming to Australia.
And there we have it. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Nigel. Just what a guy, and what resilience he's shown throughout his career and in his life circumstances. Again, we've barely scratched the surface, and I already mentioned I'm super excited to see him live in a couple of weeks. A massive thanks to Nigel. And just to give you an indication of the man's character, due to an error 100% of my own making, I actually kept Nigel waiting for 2 hours online because I had mistakenly calculated the time zones. And in spite of that, he rocked up at a totally different time with short notice and could not have been more generous with his time. So again, a testament to the man, I would say. So yeah, again, a huge thanks to Nigel, a huge thanks to all of you out there for listening. Do keep in touch. We love hearing from you. And a big thanks to those on Reddit. So we've actually had a fairly decent response on Reddit. So you can find us on there at the Keyboard Chronicles, plus all our usual socials on Facebook and Instagram, and our good old email address of editor@keyboardchronicles.com. A massive shout out to our gold and silver supporters, the amazing Dave Bryce and the team at the musicplayer.com forums, and the Keyboard Corner in particular. Such a great place to hang out, and I continue to enjoy it these 20-something years later. Mike and the team from Midnight Mastering, if you've got some creations you're wanting to get out there yourself, I've personally recommend from my own album releases, which I never promote on here, but Stainless Fields. Mike has done a superb job. I could not be happier with everything Mike's done. So do check out midnightmastering.com. The wonderful Dewey Evans from the sunny land of Wales. Thank you, sir, for your ongoing support and lovely comments after each show. And then last but definitely not least, the brilliant Tammy Catcher from Tammy's Musical Stew, one of our longest supporters and hugely appreciated. Thank you, Tammy. So we'll be back again all too soon in a week or two. And until then, keep on playing.